Hey everybody, welcome back to Game of Tones, episode 20. So a little bit of misfortune did happen while I was working on this project. I was recording myself as I was writing it, and I went to go look at the video after I was done, and it kind of froze somewhere. I don't know why. I think I had a computer PC hiccup or something, and it just kind of ruined the other half of the video. But I didn't want to not talk about this track. One of the main reasons is because I personally feel like it's one of the best tracks that I've written in a long time, at least particularly for this year. And it's done in this RPG, kind of cinematic style with a focus on forest themes and that feeling of emotion. So I really wanted to break this one down. So instead of my usual style of writing the track out from scratch, we're going to actually work backwards with this one and break it down. Mainly, again, because it was not too difficult. There were some things that did take some thought, but for the most part, I only used about 5 to 6 instruments, maybe 7. This was really, really straightforward, a really direct project, and all of the instrumentation choices played nicely with each other. I feel like this can be really good for anyone's compositional process, so I wanted to talk about it. To not get too wordy or anything like that, I'm just going to actually play the track from beginning to end as I intended it and as it is written currently now. I may make adjustments later, but let's just get into it. So that was the track in its entirety. Honestly, I'm probably not going to change too much. I do think it feels complete. Maybe a couple of touch-ups here and there, but overall I think it's kind of solid. But here's the most important thing. I want to talk about this main instrument that I bought that made this track a little bit easier for me. And no, I don't work for the company or anything, but I think this is something that you should consider having in your arsenal. It's called Evolution Steel Strings from Orange Tree Samples. I absolutely loved this. One reason is when I write water music, like this kind of ocean themes or forest themes, I always think about the instruments that have this tranquil nature to them. What feels like calmness? What feels like peace? And the guitar does that for me in that aspect. The sometimes problem could be that you can't find really good ones, or sometimes you might find a guitar plug-in and it sounds a little bit more synthy, kind of annoying. But this out of the box felt really, really good on my ears particularly. I'm not a guitar player, maybe some of you are, but to me this was like the ideal place to be. And so I got it, and out of the box I just started playing and hitting notes, right? This kind of and it feels really, really good. It feels like upbeat, it feels happy, it feels full. Right? And when I'm getting into the mode of beginning to write something, it's so much easier when the instrument that I know that I want as my anchored melody sounds good out of the box. So, quite literally, once I got this, finding the melody was a little bit tricky. I knew that I wanted something a little bit ominous, and I prefer usually writing in A minor. But the problem is, I think I've done it so often, so I wanted to switch it up a little tiny bit, and I went back into E, which I also do write in quite often. But I was actually wondering and debating for a little bit, for a long time actually, if I had to kind of dial it back a little bit, mainly because I've been using E quite a bit, and I was wondering if, well, are all my songs sounding alike? It was something that I was feeling a little bit self-conscious about. I don't know, but it's just so funny because after coming down, after watching Hans Zimmer's masterclass, he said that he always writes in D, or like 90% of the time he will write it in the key of D. And I thought about this for a long time. I'm like, you know what? I understand. You know, you're comfortable where you're comfortable. And I think for me, I was probably overthinking it. But I said, you know what? Why not? I'll go back to writing in E again. So I kind of just started playing with ideas in that space, right? Kind of more like... And so I'm falling into this forest feel. This felt a little bit more happy, so I wanted something a little bit more melancholy. So I kind of was playing around again, and I'm here. And that felt really good to me. But I think I wanted something a little bit more higher in register, so I jumped it up an octave. And truthfully, at this point, I'm feeling confident, right? Something about this is feeling really good. It feels neutral. It feels green. And the cool thing about these forest themes that I love so much is like when you look at the games that do it really well, your Final Fantasies, your Chrono Trigger, you know, Threads of Fate, Golden Sun. Forest themes are great because the environments, they're green, they're blue, they're lush, they feel really good on the eyes. They're usually kind of the first or second dungeon you may encounter in an RPG game or like in any kind of exploration game. And it kind of paints this danger feeling, but also calmness, right? Like, yes, there are obstacles. You may have to fight a couple of poisonous demons and beasts and frogs and all this stuff, but you never really feel like you're really in danger because the environments are so beautiful. And that's what I want to try and capture with this particular instrument. So the cool thing is I'm playing around with it, I'm still playing, and I find a melody, and I did keep it. But I lost my confidence literally at this point, and I said, you know what, I'm going to transpose this into a different key that I don't normally play in, and this made it a little bit complicated, so I did it at the very, very end. But really what happened, when I transformed this melody, it came out to something like this. And I kept that energy for the rest of the track in a sense, right? So let's get into this. This main pattern here, well, I used it maybe twice throughout the song, but because I knew the key of E, I felt comfortable playing around with it and then just transposing each note like a little bit down to the C sharp here. So basically, let's go into the song pattern here, and I'm actually going to mute everything. So at this point, I don't know this key at all, but I didn't need to because all this was written in E. So the next portion here that goes into guitar 2, which was the very next thing that I wrote after writing this melody, right? We're going to jump into it. So this is all happening in C sharp, but before this happened, I was up here, back again on E, my safe zone. So this felt easy on my fingers. So that came very, very quickly. I think I'm just more familiar with the key itself. I just love the tones of it. So that came very, very sharp. And once this was written, I said, you know what? Transpose it down back to C sharp. And then we have something new. This was a quick way for me to kind of vary up my usual sound, right? Maybe and kind of shock people who are used to hearing my work, and also give it just a completely different feeling, at least to me. So it's actually going really, really well. So all these notes have been transposed, every single one of them. I wrote the whole song in E and completely went backwards and transposed, and I thought it was an amazing thing. So getting into this, right? After these melodies were put in, because I felt really confident about all of these, even here, one of my favorites actually. So literally after this is done, 44 seconds has been taken up, and I didn't put any instrumentation yet. So the cool thing about this is like the order of these instruments is kind of similar to where I usually write. I always go from top down with my ideas, and normally I don't put in melodies first, but this became very easy to do so. And so I added the piano in here. I forget where the piano was from. If I'm not mistaken, I think it came from Nexus. So it's actually not even like something super fancy. Oh, look, I got an update. I have to do that later. But yeah, it wasn't like really fancy or anything. It was the, yeah, it was here. And even though I have Keyscape from Omnisphere, sometimes I do like to deviate a little bit and just try different ideas and different instruments. So this piano is a little bit more synthetic, but it still feels really good, at least on the ears to me, right? And so that ended up with this. Now you guys, at this point, I'm gushing. Usually it's very, very hard for me to find ideas this quickly. And once I knew that the melody was here, I knew that everything else was going to fall into place, because the pad section, the bass, these things are going to be highly, highly based on the chord progression that I use for the guitar. So I was basically just mimicking and shadowing the bass notes of the guitar to make that happen. The percussion itself was actually really interesting because it was almost on autopilot. I have this here. Highly recommend this as well. This came from Spitfire, I believe. Spitfire Labs, yeah. This is the Hans Zimmer percussion, and I think it's just so good. Again, another instrument that just out of the box, you're gonna get exactly what you're looking for in terms of just quality. So from here, really my next move was the bass, because I think everything is about the bass line. The bass holds the whole like song down for me, and everything else is just like an additional player. So you add that in there and you got something really interesting. Really simple too. So this has a lot of character to me, and the fact that we're so early in the process of the song itself, it just let me know that I was on the right track. The whole pad progression here was actually pretty simple. I just basically looked at what was happening here and copied it and pasted it, and then kind of elongated the notes where I felt the strings would strike. So I wasn't really thinking too much here at all. It may seem a little crazy, but honestly, I was just basically following the guitar pattern. And so when you have this all happening here, one session, it sounds so full. It has all this personality to it. And usually I'm like always second guessing and stuff like that, but now at even the 13-second mark, my confidence was just already through the roof here, you know? So one thing that I would say that really started giving me the challenge is like, how do I make this interesting? And I thought about different ideas. I don't know if anyone has played, what's the name? YS, The Ark of Napishtim. One of the songs in there was really, really good. I gotta probably link it down. It's called Quatera Woods. And this is where this section was really based on. Mainly because I wanted to keep everything here the same in this first section, right? I wanted all of this to kind of be similar, but I wanted one melody to really throw everything in for like that cool factor. Like I wanted to make a favorite part, quote unquote. Like I love when people have a favorite part of a song. So this guitar pattern was that part for me particularly. So it's a little bit funky, and by itself it doesn't really hold too much weight, but it does sound pretty decent out of the box, right? So with that guitar pattern, one thing to me, like before the pads got put in here, before all of that, we just had this, but the bass was going to be fine. So this section here with the guitar plugs, it was such a subtle and interesting choice, but it was highly recommended, or well, motivated by Arkanapishtim's Quatera Woods. And I think it's like there's just this section where these guitar plugs are playing and they're not really adding like too much to the track, but it's just like a little bit of a filler that really pushes it further. And if you listen to it, it sounds kind of boring and kind of weird and almost distorted, right? Let's take a listen. Right? Isn't that kind of weird and funky? Like, what's going on here? Like, why would you even bother putting that in? But then when it's playing underneath the layer of the first guitar, you have something really magical happening here. It sounds almost as if you're playing a guitar and making mistakes almost, or you're just kind of adding in a little bit of a rhythmic section that's subtle but adds more personality. It's almost as if someone is literally playing a guitar live. I'm really not a guitar player, so if anyone is, I would love to hear from you here. But this is actually really cool because now I've got the percussion is doing its own thing, but and since the pad section is super easy, that was like almost cut and paste. The main thing here was the melody. This actually took a long time to find a lead that was going to fit this area. Finding a lead is always tricky for me, but I ended up stumbling upon something in Analog Lab, and it was just gorgeous, right? Completely gorgeous. Almost like this childlike, playful piano, and it has like a melancholy yet innocent kind of vibe to it. I really can't wait to show off the game that we're working on because it would make way more sense. But once I heard it, I knew that that was it. And as crazy as this sounds, this was particularly going to be for like a forest environment, but it almost could potentially be even a theme song for one of the characters or the game itself. That's how resonating this felt with me. When you see the character art and the character designs and I heard that melody, I think hopefully it would come together for you as it did for me, but it felt really good on the ears, and I was like really flying at this point. So after this section here, this is the hardest part of any song, right? After you've gotten that first bit, you want to create a second half or like the kind of bridge area that's not as happy, that's a little bit more melancholy. And I was unsure what to do here for a long time. And so this is where this section here came from. Which is basically me just taking the first pattern, putting it back in here to reset everything. This was basically to reset everything, and so I could kind of go in with a clear mind and think about, okay, what am I really going to do next? And the only thing I really added here was like a little bit of a piano to indicate that this is going to be separate from the intro and something else was coming. And then I added a little bit of pizzicato strings that's mimicking the exact same pattern of the guitar to give that extra weight, the extra body here. And so this and onward, the 49-second point onward, I would say at least up until about here, this was the majority of my stress. And it's so funny, like looking at it now, even though it wasn't, it doesn't look crazy, I just didn't know what melody to put here. So the good thing is, you know, I mean, I don't know. I had never had like a teacher or anything like that, so it's hard. I'm doing this from ear most times. Sometimes it's a little bit tricky, but I was in the key of E as I was composing this, so I knew that I had to switch the key just slightly. So I think what I did, let's actually go in here. So before, I was about here. But it didn't sound good to me. So it's almost interesting. As I like to write in E, I went straight to E to create this pattern. And even though it made sense to me rhythmically, this felt more complete. I actually really think this is one of those subtle tactics that not many people are doing, and I think it really, really helps. So once I had that, and it's moving with the bass and the pad, I knew that I landed on something special, because this particular area really reminds me of this kind of dungeon-y feel. It really sets this, that dark, dank, undercover mystery and hidden danger feel. Really done well in Final Fantasy IV, in my opinion. But this was kind of like a happy accident almost. I'm just like playing and hitting keys all day. Like I think that it took maybe a couple of hours, or just like a couple of I don't know how you say, mental hours, because I'm just staring at the screen all day. And again, I'm always in E. I'm playing around with E, and I'm like, how do I navigate this to make it interesting? And so once I found that pattern, I'm like, okay, I'm onto something. And this is where the Guitar 5 pattern came from, right? This kind of waltz-ish energy. And I liked it because I was able to return to E, and it felt really good. E is my safe zone. And once that was happening, I'm like, okay, I can easily just kind of layer up on that with another pad section. I can just follow with the bass line easily. The percussion from Hans Zimmer is already going. So the hardest part here was not any of these melodies, but it was actually finding the lead melody. And that was a tricky one. This... melody writing is always tricky for me, and I still don't really have a really good way of finding out how to do it the right way all the time. Sometimes it comes easy, sometimes it comes kind of harder. In this particular case, it was a little bit tricky, but a lot of imagination was used, a lot of repetition, a lot of trial and error, a lot of trial and error. But the thing is, this section was the hardest part, and once it was done, the song was over, because I was able to copy and paste the intro for the ending here. And everything from the intro, literally from here, just comes right back here in the last concluding part. The only thing that I did to make this part conclude a little easier and a little bit more weightier was I added a chorus, which actually I bought this on a whim too, to be honest. I think I haven't used it as much as many other people, but I'm still like getting my bearings. It's the Olympus Elements. I think right now it's a soft recommend. I haven't really played with it, but this is literally the first track I've ever used it, and I had no complaints. I want to get more feedback with it, and so I can give a proper suggestion. But for me right now, it's great, right? It's just super great. I did that, and I also added the harp section here. So when you have like this all happening at the same time, it sounds a little bit more full, more powerful. Right? This kind of reminds me of that Donkey Kong energy. I don't know if anyone played that. And then the harp for the last bit of the trailing out. Yeah, so this is actually really, really good. I actually will say something about this harp. I have Cineharp, and I also have Elysium Harp. Elysium Harp was also a quick purchase. I think I was just like feeling adventurous. This is really interesting because I think this completely blows Cineharp out of the water. I am not, a loyalist by any means. I do not bat for one company over another. I feel like if I buy a tool and it works, I'm going to talk about it because it does what I want it to do. I'm just like that. Like, I don't care if it's PC, Microsoft, I don't care if it's Xbox, Sony, Nintendo. Like, if it does what I want it to do and I'm enjoying it, this is what I want to buy. This is something I would hard recommend if you are a harp person. I don't know too much about it. It's this is also a new purchase, but just the sound quality itself is just completely unfair, I think if you're gonna use a harp and you want something really fun, really enjoyable, this would be a really good choice. I threw a little bit of reverb and some delay on it for the purpose of this video, but usually it's not as echoey. But yeah, this is literally the track itself, and it's not too much happening here. I think my thought process could be a little bit all over the place for the most part, but hopefully some of you have gotten some kind of idea of what I'm getting at here. I think the main key takeaways is like always start with an instrument that actually sounds like what you want, because if you have second guesses about it and you're questioning about this, like, hey, does this sound good, or does this sound real to me? Does this sound convincing enough? Chances are you won't even have fun trying to create a melody for it. But because that guitar for me was really, really like, oh, this is definitely a guitar, I was just flying. It just felt really fun. Like, it just, out of the box, it feels fun to play. When it was fun to play, writing with it became much more fun. And then the layering aspects on top of it was also very, very easy. I also would say maybe it's not a bad idea to stick to the key that you know. And this is maybe it could be a little controversial. I think one of these days I definitely do want to probably get a teacher, just so I can get more feedback and like training under different key signatures, because I am definitely, I don't want to say a one-trick pony, but I have my comfortable zones, and I know when I'm in my comfortable zones. And the only way I can combat that is to just, try day in, day out to try and just force it. Or I can continue writing in the key that I know, or the keys that I know. And if they do sound a little bit too similar, or I want a little bit of a challenge, like at the end of the track, just transpose everything to a different key, which I highly recommend as well. But that's going to wrap this up. Hopefully you guys are staying safe. Hopefully this video doesn't run too long, but I had to talk about this one, and hopefully I have another video coming soon and not within another year like last time. Stay safe, creatives. All the best. Cheers.